A wonderful bird is the pelican. Its beak can hold more than its belly can. Pops was looking forward to the arrival of the pelicans. His dad, your great-grandfather, had told him the little poem about pelicans and their enormous beaks, and Pops wanted to know if it was true. They arrived in big crates covered with sacking, about 30 of them, looking a bit worse for wear, but doing their best not to show it, like posh ladies arriving at the prince's ball, but with their best dresses crumpled up, mud on their shoes and their makeup all smudged. "Right, get the garden shears, David." "Garden shears? What do we want the garden shears for?" Pops thought. Boss had already lifted the first pelican out of its crate, with one hand holding its body against his, and with the other hand stretching its loose wing wide open. "Now cut the primary feathers of the wing, David." "What?" "Don't worry, it doesn't hurt. It's just like cutting your fingernails. The primary feathers are the large feathers at the end of the wings, and without them the birds can't fly. We just do it on the one wing." So chop, 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 off came the big feathers. When each pelican was clipped, we released them into their enclosure. It had a big pond for a swim, a shelter, and plenty of room to waddle around. In the days and weeks following their first nail clip, whenever he had a few minutes to spare, Pops would go and see how they were doing. They always looked a bit sad and a bit frustrated and a bit angry. Pops thought, these pelicans look like I feel. They should be flying high over the fields, but they can't even lift themselves off the ground. When Pops left school, he had no idea what he wanted to do. He just knew he had to work outside, and if possible with animals, and so when his dad said he knew of a job being advertised for a zookeeper, he jumped at it. The zoo was over 12 miles away, and his only transport was his tourist rally bike, red and cream it was. It had got him to school for 5 years, through rain and shine, and now his trusty bike was going to take him to work. It didn't matter to him that everyone said it was a stupid job and such a long way to go there and back. He was going to work with all different kinds of wonderful animals and birds, and that was good enough for Pops. At first it was great to see and handle so many different animals, but as time passed, Pops sensed that the animals were only half living. They were in cages or fenced enclosures, or like the pelicans, their wings had been clipped. The zoo and its cages seemed to be a mirror of what was going on inside Pops, always being angry, always annoyed with something or somebody. He wanted to tell people how he felt about things, but was too shy and embarrassed to say anything. The boss said Pops had a big chip on his shoulder. He didn't know what that meant, but he knew it wasn't a compliment. The animals, Pops realised, were not the only ones in cages. His friends, the pelicans, looked like pelicans, waddled like pelicans, but they couldn't do what pelicans were made to do, fly. But you know what happens to fingernails? That, of course, is if you don't bite them. Ugh. Yes, they start growing again, just like the pelican's feathers did, bit by bit, day after day, longer and longer. "Remember to keep those wings clipped," the boss would call out before he got in his big car. Most of the time was spent in the city doing important business, so he didn't have much time to look after everything that was happening at the zoo. Well, the feathers never got clipped. Pops was never very good at obeying grown-ups, either at school or now at work. It got him into a lot of trouble, but he wanted to see his pelican friends do what they should be doing. He wanted them to fly. Monday morning started like most mornings. Only this morning the wind was blowing hard, straight into his face, making it difficult to cycle at his usual speed, even with his 3 gears. He used to get very angry with the wind, shouting at it, telling it how stupid it was. It would never seem to blow behind him, helping him go faster, but always in Pops's face. The wind was just one more thing he hated. Pops got to the zoo, hot and sweaty, and still angry with the stupid wind, but soon he had made up the first buckets of feed and was on his way pushing the trolley to the first set of pens, which always took Pops past the pelicans. Pops stopped and stared. Of course, the wind! He'd forgotten he might have been angry with the wind, but the pelicans were loving it. They were all standing on the highest point in their enclosure, facing right into the wind and flapping their big wings, feathers completely grown. This is it. This is the day they're going to fly, Pops said to himself. Go on, flap harder. Pops found himself not only shouting at them to fly, but his arms were going up and down too, and he was jumping on the spot. Watch, do this, he shouted. He was a very strange boy, and not a very good zookeeper. Then it happened. One had lifted off the ground. Only 1/2 metre at first, then higher and higher, then another and another, then suddenly they were off, flying. Pops thought to himself, surely they can't get over the fence, can they? But they could, and over the fence they flew, over the rest of the zoo and out into the countryside. What a sight! Great big birds doing what they were made to do. They were flying, they were free. As Pops watched them disappear, his heart began to sink. Who's going to make me fly? Who can make me free? Boss was not very happy. It took 2 days to capture them all again. He threatened Pops with the sack, and Pops didn't blame him. 'Twas his job to keep the animals in, not help them all go free. If ever I get free, Pops thought, nobody's ever going to catch me. But who can make me free? Who can make me into the person I want to be? When the answer came, it came as a great surprise.